From the John Martinson 4D Experience Lab at Purdue University, I'm Mercer Applin, and welcome to another edition of First Fridays at Fusion Studio. Today we're excited to welcome Ashley Bishop. Ashley is the rising president of ShowMotion Incorporated, one of the country's leading Broadway scene shops. With a background in drafting and project management, she has contributed to more than 600 Broadway productions, helping bring complex scenic designs to life. Ashley, welcome. Before we started, we were kind of joking that a potential job title or other job title was cage fighter.
That's very true.
And and curious about how that is an apt description for the work that you do on a day-to-day basis and the challenges that you're trying to solve.
Well, I love my job and my career, and for the most part, everything is a level of controlled chaos that is something I welcome. It definitely has its moments, and I'm guessing that the people I'm speaking to, we come from a broad background in theater, and we know that theater has so many facets to it. It's its own ecosystem within the world, which is the wonderful part of it. There's really something for everybody in theater, depending on what type of person you are and where you fit in and what you enjoy and what you want to do. However, in the section I chose, which is construction engineering and mechanical engineering, and really leadership and business management, there's a big push-pull there that's not just about can you pick the best materials for something, or do you understand the best way to build something, but do you know how to manage and lead people, and do you know how to manage a job, and do you know how to make money? We're one of the few places in theater where it's all commercial. We really have to be about the money. So I like that because I like Broadway, right? I want to do the biggest theater. I want to do the hardest thing. Whatever is the biggest and the hardest, I want that. And right now that's Broadway. I didn't get into Broadway because commercial, because it was a money thing. I got into it because it was big. But that being said, there's this whole other business side of it, where not being a nonprofit, not being a place where we have to turn to donors, not being a place where we can never write anything off, where we have to make money, we have to kill our dinner every day. There is this aggression, let's say, that needs to come with it. An aggression about getting the job, doing the job, fighting for the job, defending yourself, defending the job, and getting paid for the job, and getting paid for anything that you consider above and beyond the job. And it can come hopefully in graceful ways, but it can be aggressive. Now, that's one side of it. The other side of it that we joke about internally here at our company, and I love everybody at our company. We have just such a wonderful, wonderful group of people. But I have about 65 guys who work for me. They are men and women. We call ourselves guys, but that's not a zero to do with gender. That's just a colloquialism. But we're about, of the 65, it's like 60 guys and 5 women, right? So I mean, it is very disproportionate. And so, especially being a woman, there's so many times feels like in a given minute, but certainly a given day, where you're up against just some big tough personalities and a bunch of testosterone in the room, and just a thing where it does feel like you're cage fighting. You're in there just beating your head against some other knucklehead and some personality problem there between. It's rarely the women, but that's probably just because of the proportions of men to women. But anyway, these guys are my very, very, very best friends. But we joke, we have an internal joke, and just take this as a family internal joke that I'm sharing with all you. But we have an internal joke that the number of times a day I walk away shaking my head saying, God, boys are dumb. But it's a joke. It's just because they're always up against something where the good side of it is they're so passionate about what they do. They so much want to please both me and the client. They want our product to be outstanding that they get very emotionally involved in what's being built, which I couldn't ask for anything better than that. But it does also mean that you're managing those emotions a lot. And does it end up in fights? Yeah, every now and then. I've definitely broken up plenty of fights. I've been in some fights. I've been on the ground in fights. There's been all kinds of stuff that happens, but that's kind of what it is. And it's all good. But yes, cage fighting, definitely part of it.
How did you find your way into this particular segment of the industry? Was it something that you pursued educationally and then started working in professionally, or I
Yeah,
guess how
I
did you
mean,
find your way
Rich
to the
Dione was right there
presidency?
with me. He was, shoulder to shoulder. But I actually went to college. I went to Bucknell, where Rich was. I went to Bucknell actually as a bio major, believing I wanted to study entomology, right? Insects. I love bugs. Still love bugs. Got there and got through a year and a half of bugs and realized maybe it wasn't really a career choice. So I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to be a research scientist. And they're just, the want ads aren't looking for entomologists. So called my mom sort of, you know, very stressed and, kind of head in hands, like, what am I going to do? Everybody else is declaring a major except for me. And I don't know what to do about it. Now, my mom was a theater major from Northwestern University, and my grandmother had not only been a theater major, she had gotten her doctorate in theater in 1927. So I come from this
Wow.
long line of women who go to get theater degrees. However, they were both, my mom was sort of the liberal arts theater degree, and my grandmother was in acting and directing. So, and speech at the time, that was all lumped together. So I was, when she said you should get into theater, I was like, oh, mom, I hate acting because I do, like, I'd be terrible at that. But then she was the one who stopped me and said some words that I just inadvertently quoted to you guys a moment ago. She's like, Ash, there's something for everybody in theater. I mean, yeah, there's acting and there's directing, of course, but there's management and there's stage management and there's design of sets and there's lighting design and set design and sound design. And then there's construction and there's engineering and there's stage management, theater management, house management, like dramaturgy. She's like, it goes on and on and on. There is a whole world in theater for everybody. And she said, if nothing else, if it doesn't work out for you, you will graduate with an outstanding liberal arts education where you've both done amazing reading and you've looked at the world and at history and society and really anthropology through a lens of theater for thousands of years. And she's like, it's a brilliant
Right.
degree. If you can't decide, get a theater degree. You can apply it anywhere. So then I went to meet with the head of the department at Bucknell and just fell in love with him. I mean, he was just such a charming guy, still a friend of mine to this day. And what was meant to be a 20-minute meeting ended up being like 3 hours or something. We were just talking for hours and hours and hours. But I had a very strong background in carpentry leading up to that,
Mhm.
like from being from 3 years old, and we've got photos of me walking around with toy hammers and stuff. So I had done a lot of carpentry, not sort of construction, not large scale, but a lot of furniture building, in particular, leading up to my college career. So when I then stepped into the scene shop, it was convenient because I could right away be helpful. I right away knew how to use all the tools. I knew how to read drawings. I knew how to read a tape measure. I knew how to just whatever they were drawing, I could build. So that gave me a huge leg up. I was right away a big help. I enjoyed them. They enjoyed me. So that was, that helps enormously. And then as I learned more about what theater was, like literally how it worked, because I didn't understand. Like I was working for this a gentleman who Rich and I both held in huge esteem named Heath Handsome, and
Mm.
he's still the technical director at Bucknell, and he became my mentor very quickly. But I know I was a big help to him too. Like he needs a student or several really who love it and want to take off and run with it. So that was fantastic for me. I also, because of my family lineage of loving theater, had grown up seeing a lot of theater. So we had lived in
Mm.
London for a while, so we'd been to the West End a lot, and then I lived in New Jersey at the time. We'd moved around, but so I'd gone to Broadway a lot. So at least that I already had a sense of like what big theater could look like. And so then I graduated from Bucknell. I actually stayed there for 1 year doing like an internship to sort of get my resume looking good and to apply to graduate schools. I applied, a bunch of places. I ended up getting accepted at Yale and went there. My very first day of class at Yale, you meet with your like your advisor. So I met with my advisor and he said, okay, what do you want to do for a living? And I said, I want to be the technical director at the Metropolitan Opera. Now, as an
Mm.
aside, I also have a degree in music, just in music history and theory. But at that time, I just really loved opera. It's sort of since faded for me. But so I thought this is perfect. I'll be Heath, my mentor. I'll just do his job at the Met Opera. That'll be what I'd love. Let's aim for that. And my advisor was like, You don't want that job. So he picks up the phone and he's like, yeah, could you put me in touch with so and so? Yep, this has been, yep, okay. And gets somebody on the phone. He's like, I have a student. I'd like her to meet with you tomorrow. When do you have some time? 2 p.m. Okay, I'll have her there. Click. Now, this is in the same breath. I literally just said the word 60 seconds earlier. So he's like, you're meeting with so and so at the Met tomorrow at 2 p.m. Okay, so I go and meet with her. I get the full top to bottom tour, literally grid, trap room, everything. Got to meet James Levine, like, life hero of mine. And I meet him on the stairs coming out of the orchestra pit, but got to
Oh
shake
my.
hands with James Levine. So, no, it was an amazing trip. And then came back to Yale and met with my advisor again the next day. And he's like, okay, how was it? What'd you think? And I was like, well, I never want to work there. And he's like, I knew it. I knew it. So he's like, "What do we do now?" And I'm like, "Broadway. I'm ready to build. I want to go build Broadway." So that was how I got my goal, my focus. And then Yale did a great job for me of really focusing my classes and helping me focus my classes. I mean, they really did it for me. I was just sort of putty in their hands, but focusing my classes and internships and my production assignments towards a very Broadway level of work, that style of work. And
Mhm.
then the company I'm at right now, I was the intern here after my second year. And then during my internship, the owner of the company came to me and said, we'd like to offer you a full-time job for after you graduate. So I went back to Yale, graduated, and then came back and here I am. I haven't left. So here's something I can flex on everybody. I haven't had to make a resume in almost 30 years. And that's really nice.
That's incredible. I mean, your current company, ShowMotion, sits at the intersection of art, engineering, fabrication, and automation. Where do you see the biggest communication breakdowns happen, and how do you work to prevent them?
Yeah, it really is all about communication, right? I mean, it's the world we're in. Theater communicates. That's all we're here to do. And so in order to even get theater to happen, it's all about communicating. It's again, it's interesting to me that you struck on that because I feel like more people ask me about like what's the biggest engineering failure you've had, and that's sort of so boring to me. But the biggest communication failure is like what in the next 10 minutes, or when do you mean? Because it's constant, right? I had to take the day off. Yes, not day off, but I had to be in the city all day yesterday for a meeting on a big production we're doing in a month. And I was gone from the shop for one day, right? One day. And I came back here and I've spent every minute since 7 a.m. this morning till 11:45 patching everything back together. And every single thing was a communication problem. So I don't know what to say is the communication is the problem, right? It's getting everybody to communicate. So it's not just though speaking, though that tends to be a bigger and bigger one. Like I find myself, I sound like an old lady when I say it, but all the time I'm like, pick up the phone and talk to that person. Or more
Right.
often, if I'm standing in our design office, walk out onto the floor and go talk to the guy. You guys need to talk. Or if I'm out on the floor, get in the office and go talk to the drafter, go talk to the engineer. You guys have to talk. You have to get on the same page about this. So talking is a giant one. Drafting is a huge one. That's a whole level of communication. Getting everybody to draft at the same level and on the same way in the same language it should be easy, right? Drafting is drafting. It's a language like anything else is a language, but you can't imagine how much people want to bend the rules. It's dumb things. Again, I sound like an old lady harping on this stuff, but dumb things like, I'm going to choose this line weight to mean such and such this time. No, you're not. It has a meaning. It's not, you don't get to just decide. I mean, to me, it's like, would you take a calculator and just decide that today the plus sign means multiply? It doesn't. It means something. So does that line weight. So does a phantom line. So does a hidden line. You don't get to make this stuff up yourself. There are rules. So dumb things like that, getting everybody's draftings to be at the same level so that the shop floor can move as efficiently as possible. Another major communication thing for me that I try to tell students a lot of time is, gosh, your ability to sketch, your ability to doodle, that is invaluable. If you are sitting in a boring class and you're doodling, keep doing it because that doodling skill is really valuable. And if you're not sure what to doodle, here's a hint. Do anything in isometric. Something geometric,
Ah,
but do an isometric doodle. You don't even have to do vanishing points. It doesn't have to be forced isometric. It doesn't have to be whatever we call that. I can't think of the word, forced isometric orthographic. But please start doodling. Start first a dice, like a cube, a prism, in in 3D, in isometric, and learn how to do that with great facility. So that when you're standing out on the shop floor with a Sharpie and a piece of plywood, you can draw what you want the guy to do. And so it works because everybody will be there who's in construction and theater at whatever level. At some point, you're left with the piece of plywood and the Sharpie, and you have to make clear what you want in 3 dimensions, and you have to do it fast. And man, oh man, that's a level of communication that helps so much. I don't know. I could give a 7-hour lecture on communication. So you just stop me and get on to more exciting stuff, or I'll keep going.
Well, I'll pivot a little bit in the same kind of vein of communication. And speaking of communication, if anybody in our audience has any specific questions for Ashley, feel free to drop those in the Q&A window. I'll feather them into the conversation as soon as I can. But yeah, feel free to ask some questions. Back to kind of communication. When a scenic idea is really exciting artistically, but extremely difficult technically, how do you guide the conversation without becoming the person that says no?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, at some point you are the first person who says no. And I think you have to say to the people, I'm really sorry, but at some point I have to be the person that says no. And we're only governed by 3 things: time, money, and physics. So if time, money, and physics allow, no problem, we'll do anything. We've got brilliant brains. If anybody can solve it, we can solve it. Like we have never run up against something where I've thought, wow, that's just too much for us. And rare is it that I see something someone else has done that I don't think, boy, I think we could have made that a little slicker. So we're really blessed with some of the best brains in our industry. But money and time. So then what it really relies on is a relationship that you have developed with what we call the tech and, of course, the designer. So on Broadway, unlike a lot of places, the way it breaks down is you've got the designer, right, the set designer, and they've got a myriad of assistants. But then you've got what is really the production manager, but the colloquialism for Broadway is we call them the tech. And the tech is the person who's going to coordinate everything we're doing, and also the sound shop and the lighting shop, and the video shop. Not costumes. They don't coordinate costumes. So every trade but costumes. They're going to coordinate all the physical stuff getting into the theater and orchestrate it all getting in there. So production management, right? But Broadway level production management. We just have a different name for it. But so the real goal is to keep all groups, the shop, the tech, and the designer, in all conversations as much as possible. You don't want to disappoint the designer, so you spend a lot of time listening to their vision. And this is where a strong theater background comes in play, because designers don't talk in nuts and bolts, right? They talk in, here's the experiences we did on another show, and this moment on this show, and wasn't that glorious in 1972 when they produced such and such, and and man, oh man, being able to know that stuff and know the shows that have happened in the past, know the playwrights, know your theater history, know those shows, know all of it. Oh my gosh, is that invaluable? Because you want them to believe in you. You want them to see an educated person who cares and understands and loves theater. And I've got that. Like, I love theater. But you want them to see that the overarching thing is you want them to understand they are safe with you. So one thing that I think people forget a lot is that when a designer walks into the room with, in the old day, we used to walk in with renderings. Now they have it on a computer screen. But whether it's on a screen or on, hard copies, and then their model, which again, nowadays more and more is done in the computer, but we still see scale models show up. When they sort of pull the cover off the model, it's a crude sense, but it's a little bit like getting naked in front of everybody. They're dropping their robe. Like, it's a very vulnerable moment for them. They've come up with this thing, and they're very vulnerable. You could laugh, you could grimace, you could say, what is that? Oh, we've done that before. That'll be the worst. Oh, it looks exactly like that'll be the worst thing you could say, right? Is to accuse them of being unoriginal accidentally. So you have to be cognizant of what a difficult moment they're having there. They need to feel like they're in a safe world. They need to feel like they're with someone who's listening and paying attention to why they made those choices, not just immediately like, oh, it's fantastic. That's also the wrong thing to do. You have to listen. You have to listen and try to buy in. And you'll realize over time that there's places where they maybe even want a little of your advice, because you might point out the thing you see that you're like, this is what's losing me. And God, they want that feedback. But overarchingly, I mean, by the time they've gotten to Broadway, they're pretty solid designers, right? If you listen, a lot of times, almost always, you're like, oh, I get it now. I get it. And they have that moment too. They realize this person gets it and my art is safe. Now, what that means is that I can be out on my shop floor, and every time we're trying to make a choice that I can't get on the phone about because it's 11 o'clock at night, we got to go right now. I have all the background. I know what it is. So I can say, no, that's not going to work. We really need to do this. This is going to play into the design better and make good choices that move us forward. And, but are honor the artistic intent that the designer has. So it's a few things. You get them to buy in, right? So that now when you get on the phone, you have to give bad news, they know where it's coming from. They know it's coming from a person who's trying their absolute hardest, not just trying to get out so they can, go play golf or something. This person's trying their hardest, but physics or time or money are limiting it. At the same time, you need the tech to listen, because that's the person who could go be your bad guy. Because you can later come back to the tech and be like, dude, that was in my bid. You cut it. So you get to go tell them, and you don't have to phrase it that way, but it essentially is like, aha, I asked you about this. I don't have the money for that. Or I only don't have time for this because you want me to get done a week early because you want to go test this over. So I'll do whatever you want. But if you want to honor their thing, I need that week back. So you need to keep them in the loop too. So the tech can be jumping in front of some of the worst before you and be the bad guy when it's appropriate for them to be the bad guy. It can't always fall to you, because I mean, from a business perspective, you just won't get the next job. You have to have that designer love you and buy into you. They might not always want to hear what you have to say, and sometimes you fight, but you want them to have respect for your eye and your opinion. And you want the tech to have a very open relationship with you and have heard everything and be able to say, I know. Yeah, okay, I will deal with that. And it doesn't say.
I mean, it seems like those kind of developing those relationships and having that shorthand with the techs and the designers is exceptionally critical to what you do. I mean,
oh God,
you work on an enormous amount of productions in a relatively short period. Are there other systems or habits or techniques that make it possible to manage that amount of volume without sacrificing quality? I think the shorthand with the people involved is a huge part of that, but what else goes into it?
Well, it's twofold. So I'm the rising president, which means I'm the president on a day-to-day basis. It's just not sort of on paper yet, but it's like I'm it. I could leave myself locked in an office all day and just sort of like run the calculator, but that doesn't work. So the one thing is I'm out on the floor all the time. I know every single guy. I know every guy's life. I know when they're getting married, having a party, when it's their birthday. Like I'm involved in everybody's life, because that communication has to be open, because they need to be able to ask me questions, and I need to be able to walk out on the shop floor and say, Travis, get over here. What is that weld? Tell me what you did right there. And how soon you're doing it again. Like that, there has to be that level back and forth. But the other thing that's key is that you have to put people in positions that also are able to understand the art, value the art, have seen the art, and are able to embrace it. So everything that I get out of the meeting, the kickoff meeting that I'm having with the designer, and understanding where they're coming from and what their design intent is and what they're trying to do with this thing. Okay, this thing comes on stage, but why? What is that moment about? Like, what is that meant to do for the audience? You have that aha moment where you're like, I get it, I'm online. Okay, now let me get to my guys. So then I have a kickoff meeting with my management and go through all the same thing. And I really spend time on the art, not just, hey, here's how we're going to build this. This is, 16 gauge, 2x2 square steel tubing, and we're going to, no. Like we can do that later. Let's go through the art. Let's go through the intent. Let's go through the design elements and what they're trying to achieve. Because I got to have the automation guy understanding that, so he can be able to pick the gearing and what speeds this is liable to move at. And I've got to have our electrician know that, so she can understand how this is meant to be able to come through the fog or not come through the fog, and what color tones to fade favor and what we're really looking for in that light box or in that effect. And I've got to have the carpenter know that so that he can be able to look at it and say, no, this molding, it just won't work. That joint's not going to be okay for this. Or be able to say, no, I know the scenic artists are going to have to go through over this with a ton of texture and gloop and disgustingness. That's going to be okay. No one will see it. Move on. So everybody, I mean, same with the iron workers, same with the painters, everybody has to be able to understand what we're trying to create and why, and be able to trickle it down to their people. So the communication tree really is the roots of a tree. And so right down to the little guy on the floor who's, ostensibly would be sort of the most distant from me and from the designer, still is understanding the design intent and can on their level be doing their very best to make design choices that make sense, or really knowing when to ask a question. And so we can, zero in on that and realize at what level does that question need to get answered. You fail, but you hope to win most of the time, right? There's misses all the time. There's misses all the time, but you hope your wins way outnumber the misses.
That's fascinating. And I guess a peripheral question there is, what makes a Broadway scenic package well designed from the shop and the project management standpoint, not just what the audience experiences when they see the show on stage?
Well designed from our standpoint is well drafted. And again, here sounding like an old lady, but I mean, nowadays, more and more you see people who are paid drafters, because it's always the designer isn't doing the drawing. They're having their associates do the drawing. So to me, in my callous chair, I'm like, you're a design associate. I expect you to be an expert in the language of drafting, the way I expect a mathematician to be an expert in how you write math, not just invent something, right? But more and more we see drawings coming out where it's just so hard to read because they did it all in a computer that's some program that I'm going to hate, where it's mostly big globby things and not translating into lines and nice sharp corners, and very loose on dimensions and more about, hey, this is pretty. And I want to help you with the pretty, and we do it. We do those all the time. We work from those all the time. But from to answer your question, the ones that sort of the well-designed show comes to us in a well-designed package. They're drawings that are either emailed or whatever, they might be on the computer. They don't have to be handed to us in paper anymore. But the language is clear in terms of what the designer wants, and when the designer's not sure, that's clear as well. There's some sort of a cloud or a question or a highlight of this needs to be discussed, so we understand that, and there's a clear set of renderings and samples or references or something. I mean, that's the dream. That never comes day one anymore, but that's awfully nice. And then time, God almighty, time. The fastest Broadway show we've ever built, I can't remember. I mean, it's less than a week. We've done whole shows in less than a week, but we've done pretty big shows in 2 weeks. It's murder. It's horrible. It's a horrible experience. It's horrible. You hate everybody. There's no fun in it. It's awful. And you think, okay, well, we'll pay you enough. You don't. There's no amount of money that makes it worthwhile. It's so awful. But more and more, we see them being built in 4 and 6 weeks, which just isn't enough time. Like 18 weeks is what you need for like a nice big show. But the time gets so compressed. So when the designer and the tech both understand the need for time, and I say that because the tech might know the need for time, but if the designer hasn't gotten their drawings ready, what can you do? And bear in mind, this is the double-edged sword of Broadway. Broadway is very tiny, right? There's still what we call 3 full-size scene shops. Now, there's a lot of scene shops, but the full-service scene shops, the one that have a full automation shop in-house, and the full ironworking shop, and the full cabinet, carpentry shop in-house, and paint in-house. There's still only 3 of those. So then there's producers. There's like 5 to 7 producers, and techs. There's like 4 or 5 techs. Now there's other people floating out there, but if you ask any of my 2 competitors, they're going to give you the same numbers. There's others out there, but the real ones, the ones we look at is like, all right, you're the real guy. You're the real, you're a real producer. You're a real designer. You're a real what? The numbers are tiny, so you don't have a large enough volume of numbers to afford to piss anybody off to the point where they don't want to work with you again. Pissing them off so that you have to call them tomorrow and apologize, no big deal. Pissing them off to the point where they're like, they write you off. there's too few. You're going to go out of
Right.
business. You can't write anybody off. So when that designer turns around and doesn't have the show put together and still doesn't have drawings and still doesn't have drawings and still doesn't have, and you finally get a set of drawings with 4 weeks to go, you don't get to do what you want to do, which is turn around and piss and moan and say, I have to have more money. And you don't get to throw them under the bus and say, well, if that designer had done it, because you won't get work again. So
Right.
I mean, we're huge in what we do, but we're the low man on the totem pole. We are a service industry. We're the low man on the totem pole. You find over and over, everybody on Broadway is above you. I mean, the tech is above you, the designer's above you, and God knows those producers, they're all billionaires and they're all way above you. You're way down here. And what they dish out, you're going to say, thank you, sir. I love that. And it sucks. And then from my perspective, now I got to go to the shop floor and they're livid. What do you mean we have to do all this overtime? What do you mean we're working Easter Sunday? What do you mean we're doing? Sorry, guys, this is the way it's coming down. And now how do we make that fair to those guys and make them not want to leave? And how do we balance it out in their lives? That's where it gets tough. So if somebody comes to me and they've got a really well put together design, doesn't matter how big or small it is, well put together design and good drawings, and there's enough time to do it, right there, they won. They're gonna get my eternal love.
Switching gears slightly, this is a pun that I didn't plan. When you look at automation on stage, what do you wish more young designers and technicians understood about the safety aspects, the reliability aspects, the repeatability aspects, as they're starting to think about, moving or automated elements on stage?
That's an interesting question. Safety and reliability, I want them to not have to think about. I want them to
Mhm.
free their minds from that and trust that they're in good hands, and we're going to cover that with you, not for you. They're going to be part of the conversation, but I don't want they don't have the background to think about that. So just go. Repeatability can be a tricky one. That's also one we help them through. I actually have a video that I pulled up that I could show, and it's a good example of a repeatability problem, because when we built Stranger Things, there's a scene where there's a whole bunch of TV screens and a big wall of TV screens, and this takes place in like the 60s, I think. So it's all like cathode ray tube TVs, and all the screens have to shatter and break open, and then this scary monster comes through, basically. But making screens shatter once, no problem. But making them shatter 8 times a week and then heal, because they have to heal in front of the audience as well, that's a very tricky thing. And so, yeah, dealing with that level of repeatability on there's some small scale theater I've done that has limited runs where it's fine to budget something as an expendable that we're going to break. Okay, the show only runs one weekend, so who cares that we break that thing 4 times? But if you have to break it 8 times a week, do you have the budget for that to make? And sometimes, yes, sometimes there's definitely plenty of expendable stuff. But is that the right way to go, or do you really need something that's that automation could solve that? And that can be a tricky thing. The other thing about repeatability is where. So we spend a lot of time trying to point out to designers that something that might be really beautiful 1 or 2 times is going to grind into your deck, or it's going to grind into the walls, or it's going to grind, like it's going to start showing wear. And we want to help you with that early, and really with the tech early, because you're going to need to budget in either some way of repairing that or repainting that or changing it, if you don't want the audience to have the foreshadowing of, oh, I can see these lines here, something must be going to happen over there. And that one's a tough one, but that's where we try to just say, free your mind, tell us everything, your wildest dreams. What would you like in your wildest dreams? And then break it down and talk through what that really means. And those conversations, I find it's important. I mean, I'm always in them, but I find it's important early on to bring in some of my engineers with the most creative brains, so that they can be hearing the designer directly, not just through me, but also be offering direct feedback in terms of what when they're hearing it, what that might mean. And that's where I find myself being a translator, because they're over here speaking nuts and bolts, and the designers, it's just a different language. And so I'm hearing them being like, hang on. To you, what this could mean is da-da. And then that gets developed, sort of in a, dare I say, organic kind of way together. I mean, a show that's got very creative automation. Easy automation, a lift goes up and down, no problem, we got that. You know, something slides on and off stage, whether it's a true slide or whether it's on tracks, no biggie. But you've got shows like the Stranger Things where it's all the first time for everything. That designer better be front and center all the time because we're going to need their feedback constantly. And that can be fun, right? That's why we got into business. I mean, we all joke we can all make more money building houses or building buildings, but we don't want it. We want to do this.
You mentioned a minute ago kind of serving as a translator between multiple disciplines that speak multiple languages. In a shop environment like yours with many specialties involved, what distinguishes like a junior employee who you want to keep promoting? Like what skills are the most valuable to you, either on the interpersonal side or on the technical side?
Yeah, there's two things. There's character, that's the biggest, but there's growing up using your hands. So it's the two things you can't teach. So I don't know if this analogy will come through, but if you look at like I love music, right? So you go see Daniel Barenboim playing the piano, and he's played the piano every single day of his entire life for many, many, many hours, right? And he can do things on the piano. I mean, you just release him on Rachmaninoff, and his fingers go in a way that for the rest of my life, if I played piano for every day that I possibly could, I would never get to his level, right? So phenomenal fingers. Do you think any of the fingers of my guys on the shop floor are any less talented? I will answer for you. They are not, but it's not a piano that they play. Their fingers and their brains have done all the same muscle learning that Daniel Barenboim's fingers and brain have done, but instead of being on piano, it's been on 26 different tools. And so that's one of the things that was a benefit for me that I didn't realize at the time, but the fact that I was a carpenter growing up and just grew up knowing how to handle things, knowing how to handle tools. It's so hard to explain until you see somebody in their 20s who's picking up a new tool for the very first time and has no background in tools, and you watch how they handle it, and you're like, oh God, I don't know if I can even teach this. Because it's like seeing somebody in their 20s sit at the piano for the first time and knowing we got to get them to Carnegie Hall in a matter of years. And you're like, I don't know if we can get them to Carnegie Hall. This one maybe ain't going. But on the other hand, seeing the person come in who might have no background in what we do, but have spent their life working on their motorcycle, or they've been working on their car, they've built tree houses, they've fixed their own house, they've fixed their parents' house, they've worked on their boat, those sort of things. And you see them try the same thing, but they do it with all this learning already in their hands and brain. You're like, okay, we got help. We could get that guy to Carnegie, or we could get that girl to Carnegie. So yeah, I just hate it when I'm turning people away because they have good energy, but they don't have the background. But I just had this situation. I had two great interns for the summer. I could only choose one at the end of after we'd gotten the rest of the intern slots filled. And they both had such good energy and were nice people. But one of them had background and one of them didn't. I was like, I'm gonna spend all summer putting band-aids on your fingers. Literally. I'm gonna hope we're not taken to the hospital. Like you're gonna have to go through that bleeding learning process that the rest of us did when we were 11. And I can't if I've only got one slot, I gotta take the more experienced person. But then back to character. That's what it comes down to, right? I mean, we could all make more money somewhere else. We're here because we like doing it. We like each other. So you want someone you like. You want people you enjoy being with. It's all collaboration. You don't want someone who's a jerk that brings everybody down, right? I mean, it's a big thing. That's one of the hardest things to do is fire someone who's good, but they're a jerk. But you realize you're bringing everybody down. You're good. You make us money, but I think overall we need you to go. And that's a very difficult thing, but you do it because you got to keep the people who are the positive energy and people like to work with, and you have to have your team show up with good morale and happy, and they want to be here. They want to work. They want to be together. They want to share their lives together. We see each other more than we see our spouses. So we got to find people who we can all work together. But you got that person, that kid who wants to work and gets it and doesn't whine and isn't about me, but understands perseverance. Getting there is perseverance. It's about showing up. It's about persevering. It isn't skill. Yes, having a background with where you've used your hands, but it's not skill. We can teach you how to weld. We can teach you how to use the table saw. We can teach you how to draft. We can teach you automation. We can teach you all of that. There's nothing we can't teach, but we need your hands to come in already knowing how to hold and touch and carry things. And we need to have the character to be teachable. And one of the worst things I ever see is the people who are never wrong. I find a person who's never
Hmm.
wrong, like it's always, every time you're pointing out this never should have been this way, and they can blame it on something else. No, you can't teach if someone can't be wrong. If they're wrong, then you can correct it and you can teach it and you can move on. The person who's never wrong cannot be improved upon because no, they're flawless. Okay, you know what? Move on. Either stick them in a corner where they can just do this thing or find a way to get rid of them eventually. So the people who can say, I really got this wrong or I didn't understand, those are powerful words. That's a brain you can teach. That's a brain that can go a long ways. If you can't say the words, I was wrong or I made a mistake or I didn't understand or I don't understand, can you explain again? If people who can't say that, I have no time for it because they can't be taught anything. They'll never go anywhere.
Huh. Are there emerging trends in either fabrication or motion systems, the automation technologies that you use on stage that you think are meaningfully change how live entertainment gets built over the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years?
Well, I mean, it's what you know. The more and more and more, of course, everything is CNC, right? Whether it's laser cut or water jet cutted or routed, 5-axis routed, I mean, or 3D printed. All those technologies are rolling into our world very rapidly, and there's a lot of really, really useful places for them. That can be really quite fantastic. That's not particularly new, right? We've been doing that for 30 years, but it's been becoming more and more and more mainstream, and with more and more access to that. So there's more availability of those machines. So you just find more of that, and you find more and more that the designers are expecting that, whereas 25 years
Hmm.
ago, they were like, you laser cut that? Wow. And now, when they send you the design packets, they're literally sending you the CNC files or practically, sending you the profiles at the same minute because they know perfectly well that that's how you plan on cutting a lot of that stuff. So that one's sort of an obvious answer. If you're fishing to see if I say anything about AI, that has not dipped into our world yet any more than it has in like using Chat GPT to sort of try to look up the summary of an answer for something. So there's some of that, but that hasn't really, we haven't seen that in this world yet. We haven't seen designers incorporating it quite yet. I would expect that within a year or so. I'd expect renderings to start showing up that have incorporated some element of AI, but we haven't really seen that so far. Well, I feel like your question had another part to it that I'm forgetting now. Am I answering that, or what else did you say?
I think you did. Yeah, it was, or are there any other kind of, fledgling technologies that you see today or techniques that you see today that are not ready for prime time, but, in 5 years or 10 years, they're going to change the world?
I
Um,
don't see no, I mean, there's a lot of little things that are, little upgrades to stuff, but just at the normal speed of growth. The one thing I will call out um, as a sort of, if you had asked me this question 15 years ago, I would have said video is, just blossoming in a way that no one, or maybe 20 years ago, whatever, I don't know exactly when it would have been, but projection mapping was such a new
right.
thing, and everybody was like, and all of a sudden you couldn't do a show without projection mapping, right? And it was all over the place, and and so all of a sudden the answers kept being, well, don't worry about it, we'll just do that in video. Well, we'll just do that in video. Well, we'll just do that in video. And that kind of tanked because it was always the audiences didn't like it a lot as much. They really want to see something that's real. So then you saw things like
Right.
Harry Potter and certainly Stranger Things, but you see a lot of these very gigantic shows where it would be very easy to have a lot of the special effects be video or really handle all of it through video. And whereas, I mean, definitely Stranger Things leads heavily, uses video heavily. It's not the magic. They realize people really want to see magic, and we know magic's not real. We want to see humans' best attempts at magic because we want to be wowed by, wow, humans' best attempt at magic right there was pretty cool. How did they do that? While they know that we did something physical. It's like the magician who's able to pull the rabbit out of the hat. We know perfectly well that that wasn't magical, but we're still wowed at, like, how did she do that? Like, how'd you hide that nickel in your hand, or how'd you pull a playing card out of your sleeve? I know it didn't, you know, materialize out of thin air, but wow, how good are you at that you were able to make me never know where that came from? Same thing happening on theater. So the weird answer is we saw this, what, 15, 18 years ago with video creeping up, creeping up, creeping up. And then all of a sudden we saw it revert back to it's pretty important to have things made and be real. Let's use video, masses of it. I mean, it's on every show. Every show has an LED backdrop, right? It's everywhere. But what we don't see is let's just solve everything with video. Everybody sort of tried that and realized audiences don't like it as much. We want it solved with something. We want you to solve it. We want you to do it the hard way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pulling a rabbit out of a hat is much less compelling if the rabbit is computer generated, right?
Right. Anybody can do that. Right. We want something where it's like, wow, not anybody can do that. That's really phenomenal.
That's cool. This is kind of a different vein, but is there a mistake or a learning moment that you had early in your career, even before you got into theater and kind of was working as a carpenter or working with your hands? Is there a specific lesson that carries through into your work today?
I'm sure the answer is 100 times yes, if not 1,000. I wish you had sent me that one question a week ago and I would have come up with something really good. I think that, I'm sure there are. Maybe I'm not drawing anything to mind because they're so multitudinous that it's like, well,
Right.
which is the 10,000? Everything matters. I think overarchingly though, none of it matters if you don't have a level of honesty with yourself about where you were successful and where you failed and what you've become, but where you came from, but maybe where you still have to go. There's humility. We're in theater, right? Hubris. That's what brings down all the characters. So don't fall prey to that. Go back over and over and over and confront yourself about where you suck and what you failed at and what you could have done better and how you mishandled that and go through your own personal history. And I do that, endlessly to the point where I feel like garbage. I turn my self-esteem absolutely tanks. I'm like, oh, I'm nobody. But I don't know that I'm the pinnacle example of like how to do things, but I feel like that technique has worked for me. So I can't point to any one thing where I was like, wow, that was a total failure and I learned never to do that again. I sprayed a bunch of WD-40 once on stage above an expensive drop and ruined it to the tune of $40,000. So, I won't do that again. Be careful with the WD-40. But there's so many little mistakes we make all the time and hopefully none of us forget them. It's just, pulling up on a moment's notice might be a little tricky, but no, rest assured, there's tens of hundreds of thousands. If you don't make yourself remember them and remember how dumb you were in that moment and really take time to assess, but what should I have done and what prevented me from doing that? I don't think you ever get anywhere. So anyway, I had that moment today. We had some scenery. We had a show we loaded out at gunpoint about 2 weeks ago. And a certain element of the show had been just designed by a person who is a very accomplished engineer, but they were working in a material they're not super familiar with, and they made just a terrible choice. A terrible, terrible, terrible choice. And I didn't catch it, and I didn't catch it while I was in the design phase. It got out to the shop floor. One of my foremen grabbed me and was like, Ash, what is this garbage? But by the time I was looking at it, there was nothing we could do because I had to get it installed in the piece that day and had to get painted the next day and had to load out that night, the next day night to get into the theater. In our business, there's no world where I can call the theater and say it's going to be a day late. They have a very evil way of handling that, which is that they say, no problem. And then on the flip side, they bill you for that day. Now, every day in the theater costs, $30,000 to $50,000. And the way they bill me is they just don't pay me the last $50,000. So you don't even see it coming. There's no grace in it where they're like, well, if you don't deliver that, you're gonna get effed if you don't deliver every single thing on time. And it's gonna hurt so bad. And as I said, you're the little person on the totem pole. You have to say, thank you, sir, may I have another. So you don't get to turn around and be like, that's bullshit, I'm never working with you again. You can't. There's only 7 producers. How many times? You can always piss them off, what, 7 times? And then you're gone? So you cannot. You have to. So anyway, here I am there's a piece of scenery that gets brought to my attention, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago. Never should have been done that way. But with a gun to my head, I was like, fine, just do it. I don't care. Build it that way. I know I don't know what's going to happen. It's terrible design. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll work. Give it a go. I don't know. Maybe build it. Get it in there. So we did. And it gets sent to the theater. And then sure enough, a week ago, they're like, hey, we're really sorry to call you about this, but this thing isn't working. And I'm like, I know. I knew this call was coming. I knew it was coming. So right then, stop everything, sacrifice all money, build this brand new. Just start again, build it brand new. What mistake did I make? I didn't do that day one. Why I didn't do that day one? I knew it was terrible. I knew it was terrible 2 weeks ago. I waited a full week just quietly, maybe hoping it'll go away. It wasn't going to go away. Why didn't I 2 weeks ago just say it's never going to go away? Start building the right thing again. Still send in the garbage just to get it in the door so I don't get billed for it. Get that garbage in the door. Paint it nice, polishing a turd. Get it in the door. It looks beautiful. No one but me knows that it's going to fall apart. But gosh, start building the fix right now. Now, normally I know that. I missed it. And I was an idiot. So, then my guys were here late last night. It was the day I was in the city. They're here late. They're suffering, trying to get this thing finished and get it out the door. And I come to work today and once again feel like garbage. And thank you. I mean, they're nice guys. They're not trying to, beat me up about it. But I knew better. I screwed it up. I knew better. So there. All right. There's your piece of humble pie. Hope that's what you wanted, Mercer. I feel like garbage again.
That was perfect, Ashley. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
We like to make everybody suffer a lot on this show. Here's yours.
Final-ish question for you. When you think about the future of show motion and the industry in general, what kind of projects or capabilities are most exciting for you right now and kind of moving into the future?
Well, I feel like you're fishing for, is there a new technology we're dying to embrace or something, which I don't think there's nothing that leaps to mind on my radar like that. I mean, I think theater will continue to get refined in how well we build it or how quickly we build it. One day will we have computers, robots welding for us? Probably. And that'll be welcome. We've actually already had that demoed for us. We've had a guy visit and he's got some computerized welder that came in here and was pretty impressive. Is it laser welding? That might be a thing. That's awfully fast and seems like it might be easy to teach. It's hard to make it safe. So you got to change your facility a lot, but that might be a thing. I think that a lot of theater is dictated by the necessity to be able to change it easily. And it's hard to change, it's hard to argue with how quickly you can change wood. So there's still a lot of wood and steel that will be in theater for a long time. I guess once we run out of forests and have mined ourselves to death, we'll probably start embracing something else. But for the time being, that technology is still good technology because you can make the most beautiful, perfect, flawless, best product ever. But when the director decides, ooh, I really need a trap right here so that someone can reach in and grab, well, you really need that stagehand to be able to grab a jigsaw and, cut a hole in something. And if you've made it out of some magic material that you can't put a screw through or you can't repair or you can't bondo over, and then all of a sudden you're into, oh God, now what have we got? What have we done? So I'm sure there is amazing new technology. I'm sure a lot of it is in the computer and our ability to visualize things and to get them out to the floor faster and to hopefully maybe there's something one day that helps us double check we did it right better. We don't really do that. 3D scanning is a new thing that we've been doing a lot of in theaters, right? I don't have the technology yet, but I have subcontractors who do. So we send them into theaters and they do a 3D scan of it that, back in the day, that was so badly done, such low resolution and such a gigantic file that no one could, comparative to computers of the age, it was useless. Now it's very, very useful. They do a very, very, very good job. So I think maybe that could exist on a shop floor where it could also be kind of double checking, maybe the AI one day is double checking what's built against what's drawn and can help find some of those moments. We had that moment today too. We just built this huge lift, really big, powerful, beautiful lift. It's sitting on the floor right now. And one of the guys, and he's literally our best engineer, had found a problem weeks ago, late at night when he was drafting, and had grown the lift car by 1 inch overall. But it was super late at night. And whereas he had done that, he hadn't made adjustments. He hadn't made every single change relative to that. And then that got found on the floor today when I was like, why doesn't this fit? And all of us standing around, but it works in the drawing. What? No, it doesn't work in the drawing. It works in this drawing, but not in that drawing. And it was a horrible thing. So I don't know. One day, will there be some sort of computer that every night scans what we've got out there and compares it to some drawings and, sends us a red alert first thing in the morning? Maybe. I'm not sure how that will materialize, but that sort of thing would be a welcome piece of technology. But I don't see the human brain, the human hand going away from theater is as old as humans are, right? Basically, as soon as we had, a fire, meat on a spit over the fire, and could roll a rock in front of the door of the cave, what came next? Was it religion or was it theater? Right?
Yeah,
Was it
telling
religion or was it
stories.
theater? We start acting out the hunt from the day. Is that we're thanking the gods for sending us the antelope, or is it theater? I mean, what hyperbole goes in that? How much do we embellish the hunt and what really happened and the blood and the death? And it's theater. The first thing we did as humans, as soon as we knew we could stay alive and keep our loved ones safe, was theater. It's not going anywhere, but the human element won't be taken out of it. And I don't see human element coming out of the scenery either.
That's fantastic. Ashley, I think we're gonna end it there today. That was kind of the perfect bow on the conversation. Couple of housekeeping points before we let the audience go. Registration is open for the 2026 Symposium on Education and Engineering. That's happening at Purdue, July 24th through 25th, and is focused on turning real-world live entertainment industry practice into actionable teaching strategies. So secure your spot now. Next time, on May 1st, we welcome the Senior Manager of Audio Systems for Sphere Entertainment in Las Vegas, Jordan Tanney, for the final First Fridays webinar of this academic year. Thanks everyone for being with us. Huge thanks to you, Ashley, for sharing your insight and your stories. And we'll see you all next time. Thanks again. So long.